Hi everybody and welcome to our Church360 Ledger Entering Transactions webinar. I'm Anna Johnson. I'm a marketing manager here at Concordia Technology Solutions. You can see my email and my phone number are up there on the screen. If at any point you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to answer you and to help you out today. I'm going to jump into it right away here so that we can get started. We only have a half an hour for this presentation, so I want to make sure we get through all the material. A little bit of housekeeping to go through first. We'll have 25 minutes for the presentation, 5 minutes for questions, but you're always allowed to ask questions throughout. So if you ever have a question, I might not get to it right away, but I will try and answer as quickly as possible. And also just wanted to let you know that the recording will be shared today. So if you need to step out or leave, or you want to share this with somebody else at your church, please feel free to go do that as soon as you want to. We'll post it on our YouTube channel there. Okay, we'll go through our outline here quickly. We'll go over transaction definitions and conventions, and these will be transaction definitions and conventions that are specific to Church360 Ledger. We'll go through our debits and credits chart, which many of our customers have found helpful, so I just want to share that with you. We can also go through transaction types. So we have 5 main transaction types in Ledger. We have deposits, transfers, checks, which includes printing checks, payments, and journal entries. So I'll talk through each of those. I'll go through special transactions, so imported transactions, recurring transactions, and voided transactions, as well as copied transactions. And then we'll go through our questions and answers as well. So if you have any questions, again, you can ask them now, or just let me know if you're able to hear me and see my screen. Otherwise, just let me know anytime throughout the webinar if you have any questions whatsoever. Okay, our main transaction types in Church360 Ledger. We have deposits, which are used to record money that comes into your church. I think that's probably the most straightforward transaction types here. So basically, deposits are used for offerings, for any other donation to your church. Use that deposits function. We have transfers, which are allowing you to transfer money between similar account types. So assets to assets, income to income, or expense to expense. So if you wanted to transfer money from your checking to your savings, you can do that in Ledger. If you want to transfer money from your general fund and your income account to your youth account, you can do that too, or same with expense accounts. Payments are used for online and electronic payments, and checks are used for printing paper checks or recording handwritten checks. So the big difference here is to remember that whether you make any type of payment online or electronically, always use it as a payment. And if you're using a check, either you're printing that out on your computer, or if you just write it out, both of those things would fall under the checks category in Church360 Ledger. And then we also have journal entries, which are used to account balance corrections, interest payments, and bank fees. I personally don't use journal entries that much because I'm not an accountant, but if you are an accountant, we built that into this software. If you have that training, you know how that works, so you have that flexibility there. Other conventions in Ledger are that every transaction must have a transaction date. And you can see that little asterisk there. I'm just going to put all these options down. Any of these items with an asterisk means that Ledger does not let you save the transaction without being true. So to get to my first bullet point there, if you try to save a transaction without a date, Ledger would pop up a little notification for you letting you know that that transaction could not be completed because you needed to enter a date. As soon as you enter the date and click Save, Ledger will save that for you. So nothing gets cleared out. It just doesn't save that transaction finally until you need that. All transactions can have a memo option. The key word here is option, so you don't have to enter a memo for all your transactions, but if you would like to do that, you're certainly more than welcome, and if that helps you out, great. If you don't need it, you're not required to make up a memo for that. One more thing here, every transaction must have a minimum of 2 line items. All that is saying is that your debits and credits must balance on your transactions. So if you have $5 on one side, you need to have $5 on the other side. That's what both of these line items are talking about right here. I'm going to go to my next slide. Here's the debits and credits chart that I was telling you about a little bit earlier. Many of my coworkers here really benefit from looking at this chart when they're making transactions just to see how things work out. If you want a copy of this after the webinar, just let me know and I'll make sure to get a copy of that to you so you're able to use it. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to go into Ledger right now. Hopefully this screen will be familiar to most of you. This is just my home screen here on Church360 Ledger. Let me get my modules set up here. This should be very familiar. Here's your mini graphs with your assets, liabilities, income, and expenses, as well as your running chart with your total equity. One key thing here to remember with transactions, we're going to start out with this new transaction button. And no matter where you are, this transaction button will be apparent. So whether you're on this home screen here, whether you're in budgets, let's give it a minute to load here. There you go. You can see I went to budgets, this transaction was still here. Or if I went to my chart of accounts here, my income and expense report, you can see this transaction button is always in Ledger. So that's to make it easier for you to record those transactions. When you're ready to start doing a transaction, all you need to do is click on New Transaction, and then select your transaction type. So I'm going to start here with transfers. So you just click New Transaction, Transfer. You can enter your memo here. So I'm going to say this was a transfer, I can't spell today, sorry, between savings and checking. And you can see that it cut out my lines here. There's a cap on the number of characters you have. So I can, oh, sorry about that. Transfer, we'll do transfer, colon, savings and checking. And then you just select where the money's coming from and where it's going to. So I'm going to say this is going from my checking account into my savings account. And you can see that the debits and credits calculate automatically there, so you don't need to know which account is which there. A few other things to make you aware of before I save. If I had saved this maybe with an extra 0 and tried to click save, you see you get this error message up at the top here letting me know that my line items must sum to 0 because my credits and debits must total out. Now there's two ways to correct this. You can either correct this by adding another asset account here, so I could have these two line items, or most likely what you want to do is just take out that extra 0. And you can see now there's no more red, there's no more extra line items there, and then you can just click Save. Lets me know my transaction was created. I'm going to go back to the home page here. Excuse me, you can see here's my transfer that was recorded right here. But say I wanted this to be a transfer that occurs on a monthly basis. How would I do that? It's very simple, either to create a recurring transaction like that from scratch or from something you've already created. So if you want to do it from something you've created already, just click on that transaction. And then you can click this Make Recurring button. As soon as I click this, it starts a new series of transactions. So it's not doing anything to affect that original transaction you made, which is really important to remember. So I'll just say I want this transaction to be on 3/15. I'm going to keep my line item amounts the same. And then I select how often I want this to recur. So I will say this recurs every single month on the first day of the month. And it lets me know my recurring transaction was created. Now, since it's not March 15th yet, I might want to check where did this go, and it's not going to appear in my main ledger screen right here. In order to fix that, all I need to do is go to my settings, and then go to recurring transactions. And if I type in the name of the transaction I just created, you can see that this is where the transaction for the recurrence took hold. So it's letting me know it's transferred from checking to savings. I did it on the 1st of every month. So the next time the 1st of the month rolls around, when it's April 1st, this means that this transaction will appear up here in my pending transactions, and I can either confirm or delete that transaction. So let me show you how that would work. I have a couple pending transactions right here. Let me pick this one for my heating and air conditioning bill. So I selected a recurring transaction way back in the day for my heating and air conditioning bill. And I put all this information in to start out with. But for many of us, our heating bills might vary from month to month, and that's completely okay. The recurrence is acting just as a reminder for you so that you don't ever forget to pay of payments or write a check to somebody. So I'm just going to say this was the March heating bill. I can change the date here. So if I got this on March 8th, I can do that right here. It saved who my payee was. And then let's say that I had a higher heating bill than later. You can see it's letting me know the differences here. And as soon as those balance out, this is cleared out and I can just click save. It now has created that recurring transaction. And if I go down here, you can see here's my March heating bill for $100. And it'll always appear next month after next month in this recurring transactions view up here unless you delete it. So that was just a little bit about both recurring transactions and transfers. The next thing I want to do is a deposit. To start a brand new deposit, all you need to do is click New Transaction and then Deposit. You can make a memo for this. So if this was offerings, March 4th and 5th, you can do that right here. You can select the date. I'm going to go back to Monday for this transaction. You can enter a payee if you wish. You don't have to. And in some transaction types, I know it doesn't make sense to enter a payee, but think of this more like a record of correspondence of any type of transaction between you and another entity. So even if it's a transaction type where you're not paying an actual person, you could use this payee to track if that entity has given you money or something like that. Okay, then you enter your asset and income account. So I'm going to say this was a deposit into my church checking account, and then I'm applying it to the general fund. That's where the income is going through. If I wanted to make this recurring, I could click on that button here, but since we did that already, I'm not going to do that right now. And I can just click Save. Again, you'll always get this message that lets you know your transaction was created. And then I can close out here. And then you'll see down here it has a record of all my transactions. Okay, the next type of transaction here is a payment, and just as a quick refresher, payments are made for electronic payments. So between payments and checks, I'm going to show you how you could record a payment to the same vendor, whether it was an electronic payment or a payment by check. So we're going to make this our Youth Bible Study Curriculum. I can select any date for this, so I'll just go back to Tuesday and I'll make Concordia Publishing House my payee. And then again, I just select my asset and expense accounts. So I'll go in here and select this was coming from the youth fund, $500, and then I want to expense this to youth. And you can see I typed this in and it took out any of my expense account that were related to youth. So I'll expense this to youth supplies. The debits and the credits automatically calculate here, and then I'll click Save. And again, it's letting me know that my transaction was created, and if I go back to Tuesday down here, you can see that my youth Bible study was accounted for right here. Now, say that I did want to pay for my youth Bible study, but I was writing a paper check. How would I do that? Well, in that scenario, you would go just to New Transaction Checks, and hopefully you'll notice a few things are different here. For one, you have a preview of your check, and this is really helpful for people like me who aren't necessarily trained in accounting, but just want to help out at church and you want to make sure you're doing it right. So I know what my check should look like for this, and as I fill out these different fields here, you'll see that the check auto-populates. So I'll make this memo be Youth Bible Study. I'll select a date and a payee, and this can be any of your payees. I'm just using the same payee for this example. Then you select your check number, and just watch right up here in this right-hand corner. As soon as I type in the check number, if it was 235, it'll auto-populate here. So Ledger is trying to make this checks view as much like your normal checking account as possible so that you always know what to do. Then you just select your asset and expense accounts again. So I can select again from my youth fund, I can select $250 and then I can expense that to my youth supplies fund. Then I'll click Save. Now you can see that when I create a check, it doesn't only automatically appear here in my main transactions view. It also lets me know that my check was added to my print queue. So I can click on this button here and you can see that I have one transaction in my print queue. And this is just a record of checks that are waiting to be printed or marked as printed. So this is a good way if you're entering a lot of checks at once. You don't have to enter it and then print, enter, and print. You can do them all at once through the entry screen and then print them all at once or handwrite them all at once. If you are actually printing them on your computer, you would click this print button and then it would just print as normal using those checks forms you got in the mail. If you just wanted to mark it as printed because you are writing it out in your checkbook, you would just click this button. So that's what I'm going to click today since I don't have a printer connected to my computer. The big takeaway here is that whether you're marking it as printed or actually printing it, the check disappears from the print queue as soon as you click this button. So I'll click Mark as Printed. It'll let you know that this will remove it from the print queue and then click Confirm. Then you can see this little icon next to my printer up here disappeared. That let me know that I don't have any more pending checks to be printed. The last regular transaction type I want to go through is a journal entry. And again, this is for someone, if you know accounting really well, you know what you want to do, you can always go through the journal entry screen. The big difference here is that there aren't any boxes on this screen suggesting about your debits and your credits. You get to enter that information for yourself. So if I wanted to enter interest payment, we'll do it here, and we'll say this accrued on my savings account. Maybe I only got $1 interest. But this does turn red. You can see if it doesn't balance, and then we can have this apply to my general fund. And then we'll just credit $1 there. So if you want to make a journal entry, I could keep adding line items as I want. You can see as soon as I added a debit, the credit box grayed out, and vice versa. You can see these are green to let me know that my transaction balanced. And then I'm going to click Save right here, and it lets me know my transaction was created. You can see that interest payment was recorded right here at the bottom of the screen there. Now, I often hear the question, what if I want to edit a transaction? What if I realized I made a mistake, but I'm a little leery of doing journal entries? What do I want to use for that? For that, we have another mechanism built in that automatically creates a journal entry for you. And to access that mechanism, all you need to do is click on the transaction you forgot. So I'm going to go back here to my Payment for Youth Bible Study Curriculum. And let's say I forgot to enter shipping on this. You can click on that transaction and you'll notice that instead of it saying you're creating a payment, it lets you know you're editing a payment here. So I'll just add my shipping amount. So we'll say it was $10. And then I'll add any added accounts here. It'll again make sure it balances. And then you can add an amendment memo here. So I can say forgot to calculate shipping. And then you can click Save. Oh, and it's telling me my line items don't equal 0. Let's see if we can get that to work one more time. I'm going to, I think it was because I had two different asset accounts in here. Youth Fund, $10, and then Youth Supplies, $10. I'll click Save. There we go. A new transaction was created for this correction. You can see the correction is listed here, and if you hover over it, it lets you know your transaction has been edited. And then also, if I go over to my general ledger report, there's a record of that journal entry taking place. So I'll scroll down here, go back to March 2nd, and you can see that my forgot to calculate shipping is right here. So that's a nice option for editing transactions if you're someone who you want to make changes, you realize you made a mistake, but you're not sure how that journal entry feature works. You can always just click on any transaction that doesn't have a lock button by it and make that edit as you see fit. think I have just a couple more, and those are voided transactions, copy transactions, and recurring transactions. So let's go through them in that order. Voided transactions, that's if you want to void a check. So I'm going to click on this last check I have in here, and let's say it got lost in the mail. Concordia Publishing House never received it. If you want to void it, just click on it and click this void button. It lets you know your transaction was voided. And then you can see here this top transaction is a little bit of a lighter gray color, and it lets you know that it was voided and on what date. And the amount was reduced to $0. So if you ever have something that needs to be voided, just follow that same process. Click on the transaction, click void, the amounts will go to 0, and it will be grayed out here. It won't let you make any more changes to that transaction. You can also copy transactions. So if I wanted to copy, say I wanted to copy my offerings transaction, you can click on it and then click copy. You can see it's letting me know I'm editing something. And then this message up here changes to let me know I'm creating a copy of whatever this was. So maybe I wanted this to be my offerings from March, let's say for February. I could change the date, and because it's creating a copy, again, it's not affecting your original deposit. And maybe I'll change this to 475, 475. I'll click save, and it lets you know the transaction was created. And if I would scroll down here to February, you can see that here was my transaction that I used a copy feature to create. The last thing here is imported transactions. We do import transactions from Church360 members. Those transactions would show up here in your right-hand corner. I don't have any right now, but if you had a little members icon right here, you would just click on it and then follow the same process as you would if you were creating a transaction from scratch. We also import transactions from paychecks. If you use that for payroll, you can just click settings and then imported transactions. You'll import your paychecks file and then follow the instructions on the screen. If you had previous imports, they would be listed here underneath. Okay, so I think I got through all my main bullet points here with all my different transactions. Let me go back to my slides and see if we have any questions. If not, we might get to end here a little bit early. So I'm going to go back to my slides. Just a few more things to make you aware of. We do have a help system which covers everything I went through today. It's Church360 Ledger. We use a place called Zendex. So if I copy this in here, let me just show you what that looks like. Give me 1 second here. And this help system is accessible anywhere you have a computer. So I'm just going to copy my URL here. And you can see that this is what our help system looks like. So if you had any questions today, I would encourage you to go to the help system, click on transactions, and then it goes through pretty much everything I talked today about. So voiding, editing, copying transactions, it goes through each of these different types. So hopefully you'll be able to find anything you're looking for in that Church360 Ledger help system. If you're the type of person who prefers to have a paper manual, we do have those available. They're $25 plus shipping. You can order them at 360ledger.com/training. But again, I would only encourage you to get this if you couldn't find what you needed on the help system or you didn't like that electronic version. We really are hoping that people use the help system and find that most beneficial. Here again is my name, my email, and my contact number, as well as a software support contact number. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about the webinar today. Otherwise, you can always reach out to software support. And sometimes I know our customers have said, well, I really don't have a problem with this software. It's working fine, but I just have a question. Is that okay to contact them? The answer is yes, definitely. That's why they're there. So even if you think you're doing something right or it's not turning out the way you want, please always feel free to contact our customer support to have them help you through whatever your problem is. Oh, and the next thing I want to go through is if we have any questions and answers today. So I'm just going to check those quickly. And it looks to me like I don't see any questions and answers. So with that, I think I'll sign off for the day. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you again real soon.